Hi, I'm Keith Belanger, SqlDBM Product Evangelist, and I'm excited to introduce and demonstrate for you the SqlDBM Database Schema Monitor. This innovative solution not only chronicles the order of changes found in your database, but also provides DDL detail for those specific database objects. So let's dive in and explore how it can transform your database management experience. Let us begin on the SqlDBM homepage, and in the upper right-hand corner, let's log into our account. Once we're at the account page, at the far left at the bottom menu is the database schema monitoring option. And this is going to bring us to the database schema monitoring solution. Before I create any type of monitoring, let me first discuss what DB schema monitoring will do. These jobs will, on a scheduled basis, take a look at Snowflake to see what type of data structures are currently in place and compare them to what the monitoring jobs had found previously. When you first set up a monitoring job, it will baseline what currently exists inside your Snowflake database schema. If it is empty, then it'll just bring back that there is an empty schema. If you have an existing Snowflake database with many objects, the baseline will start with the objects that it finds. It will not identify what the changes were prior to that, but from that point going forward, each time your database schema monitoring job runs, it will identify the changes since the previous execution. So let's go ahead and create a monitoring job for our new Snowflake database. I'm going to call this job the EDW production. The server is just my URL account to my URL to my Snowflake account using my login credentials for Snowflake. One thing I want to note here, as it is with reverse engineering in SqlDBM, the monitoring job just leverages the DDL within inside Snowflake. There is no interaction or access to the physical data within your database. You want to be sure that the user's role that's being used has the ability to do a get DDL type of statement with inside Snowflake. Now that I've got my credentials, let's go and connect to the database. Here's my new database and my EDW schema. So let's select that schema and set a schedule. Our teams run in daily delivery sprints. We're very fast. So I'm going to want to have this job monitor every day at 6 a.m. after the overnight deployment has occurred. So I schedule this for every day. We're going to do a custom time, and let's make that at 6 a.m. in the morning every day. Now, if you wanted to, the most frequent you could run this would be every day for every hour. So you can do hours or days, weeks, months, and so forth. So for the moment, I've got this scheduled. Let's set our notifications. What I want to do is I'm going to have myself an email sent as a notification each time a change is identified by the monitor so that I don't have to go and look every day. I will be notified when a change is found. Now, I'm going to save this monitoring job. You can also see in the lower right-hand corner is that I will also execute this job at the time of save so that I can baseline my monitor. And let's save. You can see it brings us back to the main screen, and we can see that our EDW production monitor is running. So let this run for a little bit. There, now that our monitor is complete, we can see that we have the green arrow that the run was a success. If I click on the bird's mouth here, we will see that we have the log that ran, what time it just ran, and what it found. So how do we know what it found? Let us go look at the actual visual change log. So we're clicking the three dots to the far right of our job. I get options, and I'm going to click on visual change log. Here we will see visually when the changes occurred. We can see that today, January 9th, that the EDW schema was created and that there was no additional objects. If I click on the arrow, we'll see the actual DDL that I had executed to create the schema and set that monitoring job. So now I'm going to go into Snowflake and I'm going to do the first release of objects into the database. So let's go to the Snowflake go to my worksheet, and I'm going to execute the DDL. We'll give this a minute to run. And now that that is complete, let's go back to our database schema monitoring. So rather for now than wait till the following morning for the change to occur, I'm going to execute the monitor manually so that I can get the new changes into my log right away. So I'm going to go back to the schema monitoring job. And if I actually click on the far right, again, those three dots, I can say run now. So let's run it again. And let's wait for this to run. Okay, that manual run has now completed. So let's take a look. So here we'll see that it ran again at 7:42, which is the time I just ran. We'll also see that it identified the 7 changes that we just executed and deployed into Snowflake. If you would like to compare the changes between the different monitoring sessions, here you can click the compare button. If I click compare, we'll see the 2 sessions again, the 7:39 and 7:42, and we will see that on the second run, the following objects were created that were not there in the prior version of the monitor. And I can click on each of these and you can actually see the DDL that was executed. Again, if I go back and I go to the far 3 dots, we can take a look at the visual change log again. So now we'll see on the visual change log that we had for this particular the first run, we had just a schema that was created, and the second time it ran, the objects that were also created. So at this point, we have baselined our database schema monitoring, and we're ready to track the changes going forward. So we will take a look again tomorrow, the following day, to see what we pick up for any other changes that occurred during the day and for the subsequent days as we progress. Hey everybody, and welcome back. It has been a few days since we have turned on our database schema monitoring, and so let's go back into SqlDBM and see what has occurred over the last week or so. So I'm going to go back into my account, navigate over to the database schema monitoring. Here we will see the monitor that we had created. I have stopped it from running, so let's take a look at it. If I click on the bird's mouth here and open it up, we can see over to the far right the logs of all the times that the monitor ran. And on the left-hand side, we can see all of the changes that were detected over the course of these days. Now, for each one of these changes, I also did receive notifications via email about these changes. If I want to, I can go into the compare feature and kind of compare what was different between these changes. So the difference between January 13th and January 11th, we can see that there was a tag that was created here. And if I click on it, we can see the actual DDL that was executed. If I click on customer, we can see that there was changes there. So there was, some changes in terms of the attributes that were added, a tag was applied. So we're able to really see those differences across each of these different versions and having that level of history that was executed within inside the database platform. Now there's another perspective in which we can take a look at this information. So if I go back to the monitor and over to the far right hand side, one of the options we have is what's called the visual change log. If I click on the visual change log, it's going to give us a completely different perspective of those changes. So you can actually see to the far right in January, in that 8 to the 14th, that 17 changes were detected. Now currently I'm looking at it from a week perspective, and that's why you see it condensed like that. If I say let's look at it from a day perspective, we can now see it again, how those changes occurred over those few days. Below, we also have it broken out by days as well in terms of when things were added, when things were updated. So in other words, another great way of seeing your changes over the course of time. And again, if I click on, so what was updated for the DIM customer on the 13th, if I click on it, again, it drills down into the DDL. You see the DDL from what it looked like in the database at the prior monitoring job, and then what was executed on the 13th to modify that table, and you have that comparison side by side. And another great feature here is part of the search. So you might have, a long period of time of changes that might have occurred. So if I was to say, well, I want to know when, I'll use customers again, when customer may have changed. Here, if I search on customer, you can see all the things that have happened with customers, right? And the different colors also tell you. So I can see here that dim customer was green, which was created on the 9th, and then it was edited on the 10th. Well, actually, that was entered on the 13th. The 10th was the fact table. But if I say, oh, I want to see the original when dim customer was created, if I click on that, it'll jump over to that particular point in time, and then you can open it. So it's a great way to jump around and see when things may have occurred. Here's the dim customer. So again, this is a small, weak sample set, but as you can see, if you have the database schema monitoring turned on over weeks, months, year period of time, you then capture that change history of your database objects within specific database schemas within your environment. And that's our database schema monitoring solution.